And now we get two perspectives, starting with Democratic Congresswoman Norma Torres, who represents part of Southern California. I spoke with her earlier today. Congresswoman Torres, thank you for being with us. What specifically triggered the wave of public outrage that has led to days of protests, in some places riots? What has been building up?
What has been building up is the fact that Donald Trump has sent ICE agents armed to the teeth with face coverings in unmarked vehicles, raiding communities indiscriminately, targeting Latinos, arresting them, and failing to provide due process, not carrying warrants. And when members of Congress like myself have presented ourselves at the ICE holding locations, they have refused to allow us to come in. They have refused to brief us on what their actions have been, how many officers have been involved, local officers, and how many injuries have we had, and to really have any oversight over what they are doing. Look, I have visited that location in the past. The max capacity for that location is 100 people, and we are receiving reports that there were probably close to 1,000 people being detained during the time that we were there. So that makes sense to me that they refused us entry because they did not want us to see the conditions that these humans were being held in.
Now, ICE says it's targeting people with final deportation orders, people who have exhausted the range of legal options available to them. Some 1.5 million undocumented immigrants fall into that category in this country. If we're a nation of laws, why shouldn't federal agents enforce those court orders?
If that was true, they would come in with a warrant. If that was true, they would have an actual name and they would be asking people for their identification. They would not be breaking car windows and they would not be raiding places of employment, school graduations, or standing in front of elementary schools demanding to be allowed in to arrest children.
We have witnessed some disturbing scenes, protesters throwing rocks at police, setting off commercial grade fireworks near law enforcement, even torching self-driving cars. So far as you know, who are these rioters? Are they part of the broader protest movement or something more fringe and opportunistic?
They are not part of the movement that has been a peaceful movement of immigrants and their neighbors, their supporters, trying to have their voices heard. The city of Los Angeles is very diverse with many groups with many different agendas. And the people that understand these groups best are the local police department, the LAPD, and the local leaders. That is why we cannot get ahead of them. And that is why we need to allow them the time to have to exercise oversight over what is happening and take control of the situation. But this cannot happen while ICE continues to unleash this terror on our communities.
Lastly, Congresswoman, you're facing some criticism from conservatives for the social media post where you called out ICE agents.
ICE get the out of LA so that order can be restored.
Does language like that coming from a sitting member of Congress, does that risk escalating tensions at this already volatile moment?
Absolutely not, any more than language like just grab them by the P word. Guess what, America? We have become the P word.
Congresswoman Norma Torres, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Nice talking to you, Geoff.
And for another view, we turn now to Kathryn Barger, chairwoman of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. She's a Republican who represents LA's 5th district. That's the county's largest. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So President Trump's move to federalize the National Guard, we've now got 700 U.S. Marines who are on standby. This represents a use of federal military authority not seen in some 6 decades. Do you believe that this was a justified move to restore order?
Well, early on, in my understanding is the reason why the president and Holman brought in the National Guard was because they felt that the ICE agents were not being protected. And clearly there were issues early on. This is law enforcement. These are all people that have taken an oath to protect, in the case of LAPD, protect the public, but also protect their fellow officers. And that was why initially it went on. Listen, this is truly getting out of control as it relates to the finger pointing and all that. The bottom line is there's no coordination. And that's my frustration, is that there's no communication between the state and the federal government, because the state has a law that they cannot work with ICE. This is what happens when you don't communicate.
Well, how do you define that boundary between federal power and state sovereignty in the context of immigration?
Well, listen, I'm all for state sovereignty, and I feel the governor's frustration by bringing in the National Guard, who are not coordinating with local officials. There has to be coordination, otherwise you get chaos. And that's what we saw last night, which is totally unacceptable. And I respectfully disagree with all the leaders that think that using profanity and flaming the fires is going to help the situation. We as public officials need to stand tall, recognize that peaceful protest is allowed and actually should be done. But when it escalates to where it did last night, it's crossed the line. When I see the graffiti that is on the state buildings and the profanity and the kill the police. Meanwhile, I've got a sheriff's deputy that was shot over the weekend up in the Antelope Valley who's sitting in a hospital. This is absolutely unacceptable to take on law enforcement in this way and not have their backs, including ICE.
Yeah. Do you find the way that ICE is conducting these immigration raids, using unmarked vehicles, wearing full face masks, in some cases not carrying warrants, not providing due process to the people who are detained, is that an appropriate way to enforce federal immigration law?
So, we need to flesh out the facts, because I am told that, in fact, they did have warrants. And so I think it's important for us all to get the facts. And that's where transparency comes into play, because obviously I don't condone going on into a school under the guise of checking to round up children. I think that's totally inappropriate. But at the same time, I'm being told that, in fact, ICE did have warrants and were going in specifically for individuals that, quite frankly, don't belong in this country.
Where does LA County head next after all this, in your view?
Well, LA County, we are the umbrella with we have 88 cities under our jurisdiction. LA City is one of them. Obviously, Mayor Bass is very, very, very involved in this, working with the governor. We have our Office of Emergency Management that stands ready to assist in any way possible. There's mutual aid taking place between the sheriff and LAPD. I'm hoping that people can take a step back, stop tweeting, and actually pick up the phone, talk. You can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, what's happening on our streets is totally unacceptable. And these are anarchists. These are not peaceful protesters. These are people that are taking advantage of the situation, looting downtown, looting businesses that, quite frankly, are literally just trying to get by each day. And I find it highly, highly, highly inappropriate. And as a local leader, I'm not going to buy into all this rhetoric. I will work with the feds and I will work with the state, but I recognize there are some of the issues that the state's put into play that have basically put us in the situation, including laws that do not allow us to work with the federal government, with ICE, which to me is a disservice to the men and women that work for ICE, because it's putting them in a situation of what you're seeing. They have to mask themselves because there's people that are doxing them. And I find it fascinating that we talk about the ICE that are masked, but no one talks about the protesters.
Kathryn Barger, chairwoman of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. Thank you so much for your insights and for your time this evening.
Thank you.
And we should mention that we asked for interviews with the Trump administration's border czar, Tom Homan, and the U.S. Attorney for Central California, that includes Los Angeles County. Our requests for interviews were turned down.